Do it.
(2005). An unpaid intern at Nickelodeon Studios, trying to get a degree in animation, gets a little more than bargained for when a young student sits down in the viewing room to watch the new episode of Spongebob. As everyone gathers around to watch the new episode, the title screen comes up: Squidward Suicide. The intern explains how the animators put up a mock title to the episode, so they assume this is nothing but a morbid joke. As the episode begins, it seems usual. Squidward is playing his clarinet. Spongebob is outside running around and making too much noise, as accustomed. Squidward leans out his window and yells at Spongebob to quiet down. Spongebob politely says okay, then goes to see Patrick and Sandy. The bubble splash screen begins and opens up to a new scene, the end of Squidward's concert. This is where things start to become more sinister. While the scene is playing, a couple frames are repeating themselves, but the audio does not. The crowd begin to boo Squidward. You can almost hear malice in the screams of disapproval. Squidward looks afraid. Spongebob turns into the shot and he is too, shouting with the crowd in a spiteful taste. This isn't the most bizarre thing, however. Everybody in the crowd had hyper-realistic eyes. They were extremely detailed, not good enough to be humanized, but too good to be CGI. With the scene ending and a new beginning, the shots at Squidward, sitting at the end of his bed, looking very dejected. There is no sound, zero feedback from the speakers. Silence proceeds for 30 seconds. Then he begins to sob softly. His weeps turn into crying, and his cries turn into tears of anger and hatred. The eerie fact is that the quality of the cries make it seem as if it were real. Underneath the sound of the quiet breeze of the wind and the cries of Squidward, you can hear a very faint, evil laughter. The screen then twitched violently, and for a single frame, something flashed over the screen. As the editor rewinds back to the frame, his face hangs in disgust. The still frame was an image of a dead child, a child as young as 6. His face being mangled and his eye hanging out, there was a shadow of a photographer, the one seeming responsible for the child's murder. The screen flipped back to Squidward. Blood was dripping from his eye socket. The blood looked hyper-realistic again, like if you touched the blood you get it on your fingers. After 20 seconds, a single frame shot popped up again. The editor was reluctant to turn back, but they knew they had to. Another dead child, this time a girl, at least 6 like the other. Her eye was also popped out of her skull, and again the photographer's shadow was there. 5 seconds later, Squidward went silent. His eyes were visible. They were bleeding, bloodshot and pulsating. Staring at the screen, he begins to start crying again. His cries were mixed with screams. Tears and blood were dripping down Squidward's face at a heavy rate. Then, another child murder photo appeared. Another boy, around the same age. The insides of the stomach were being slowly ripped out by a hand. The right eye was popped out and dangling, with blood trickling along it. After this happened, the lead sound editor ordered everybody to stop. He called in Mr. Hillenberg about the episode. He seemed extremely confused as to what was going on, so he resumed the show. All screaming and sound once again stopped. As the scene pans out, you hear a deep dark voice say, "Do it," and there's a shotgun in Squidward's hands. He immediately puts the gun in his mouth and instantly pulls the trigger, splattering hyper-realistic brains and blood all over the wall. Mr. Hillenberg is irritated over this. The majority of the people had already left the room, so only a handful of people watched the episode again. The only known theory was that somebody in the drawing studio edited the episode. All equipment involved were examined but everything checked out fine. The images of the dead children were investigated, but nothing came of it. Squidward's suicide began on YouTube when somebody posted a video about a lost episode. Shortly afterwards, a rumour was spread around saying that this story was real, and posted the image that came along with the video as proof, the hyper-realistic Squidward. There was no closure to the story. Does the writer stay at Nickelodeon, or does the writer leave? Did the writer get a hold of the copy of the episode, and do they still have it? Did Nickelodeon ever keep a spare copy? And how did the episode get made? Who was the deep dark voice? Did the death of the kids and Squidwards have anything related? Well, the story has no answers. Only you.